You're welcome back. It's the polling station with Paul Krishnamurty, myself, Johnny Ward, and William Kedjanyi. And my oh my, do we have plenty to discuss. Liz Truss, one of the least impressive individuals I think I've ever seen, is about to win the race to be the Conservative leader, and a particularly unimpressive character across the States, who was the subject essentially of an FBI raid during the week. Is this a good or a bad thing for Donald Trump as he bids to become the next US president? We also have betting on the Senate, who's going to win that race, and this is very tight, 8 to 11 Democrats, even money the Republicans after the 2022 midterm election. We've got loads to discuss. I got to welcome Paul and William to the show. We're all in various parts of some sort of a heat wave at the moment. Paul, you're in Glastonbury, basking in 32-degree heat in a gaff that doesn't have air conditioning, like every house in Ireland and Britain.
I am. It's boiling. You know, look, we can't complain, right? It doesn't happen that often.
Well, I've been complaining a lot about it, actually, William. I would be investing a lot of my money in air conditioning companies, to be honest, going forward.
Yeah, I mean, that previous year, I can't abide that, but it's good to know that Lord Frost's editorial is not Wayne. Yeah, somehow managing to not melt so far. And I've also shown my true defiance to global warming by bringing back the cat tie.
So you do look you look at the shade of Jon Snow about you, actually, there, I would have argued.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It will all be worth it if I don't spontaneously combust, and that is odds against at the moment.
Okay, so the Donald Trump situation, if ever this man is a dramatic life he's had since he was president, since he ended up not being president. He has signaled he's going to testify in this business probe in New York. He's got an awful lot of stuff coming down the tracks. Obviously, the FBI raid. What did you make of it all, William? And does this help or hinder his prospects of being the next US president?
Going to give you a politician's answer to the second question.
Absolutely.
So here's the help thing, right? It gives him that narrative that he's always been clinging on to. In fact, he's had it pretty much since the moment Biden was officially confirmed or called the winner. This just brings it back into view. And he's already fundraising off of it. I think he sent 2 or 3 emails. The other Trump surrogates will be, the GOP will fundraise off it. And that will be a help to him. It also allows him to fire up the base, even Fox News, which had gone a bit more anti-Trump, along with some News Corp outlets, some big News Corp outlets. Yesterday, they very much reverted back to type. So that's the help. The hinder is, first of all, he's got a lot of legal troubles. In fact, as Paul elaborates on in a moment, he had to plead the 5th today. There's a New York investigation against him. I think he's got 13 major investigations going against him. And this New York will be the biggest. The FBI searching a place that I'm more than aware that American police forces are inclined to very much do what they want upon occasion, but an FBI search in conjunction with a DOJ investigation is not something that is done on a hunch or for the fun of it. There is clearly enough evidence there for a search warrant, so much so that the FBI director, Christopher Wray, chosen by Trump, and the Attorney General Merrick Garland can sign off on it. If there's that much about him potentially violating the Presidential Records Act, the penalty for which I think is that you can't run again if you're found to have defied it. That's a really big iceberg, and we don't know where it is. We don't really have sort of sources or leaks telling us how close we are, but all we do know is that boxes were taken away, and we already know that Trump, who already breaks lots of laws and doesn't care for record keeping, doesn't care for the rules and regulations, was fast and loose with classified intel anyway.
Yeah, iceberg. What were they like? When your family, your company, and all the people in your orbit have become the targets of an unfounded, politically motivated witch hunt, supported by lawyers, prosecuted, and the fake news media, and fake news media is in cap locks, you have no choice. If there was any question in my mind, the raid of my home, Mar-A-Lago, on Monday by the FBI, just 2 days prior to his deposition, wiped out any uncertainty. Paul, I think you've been fairly consistent in the fact that he does have an awful lot of shit coming down the tracks for him to avoid, to be justified being. He is Santos. He's still actually 3-1 joint favourite to be the next prize.
Yeah, he has an enormous stuff coming down the track, and it's highly dubious that he would win anyway, even without that. You know, DeSantis at this stage in the cycle, Ron DeSantis is only known to hardcore activists, Floridians. You know, the people who watch the national scene, right? And he's already, he has got way to climb in terms of either up or down, right? He could also, his reputation could implode. The fact that he is leading Trump in certain states where he's started a campaign, like New Hampshire, right? That just shows you that the tide has turned. I've got to say, regarding Trump's Teflon and the narrative that surrounds him and just dominates social media, it is just nonsense. It's always been nonsense, right? Let's just go back, right? He won one election with a freaky result because of third-party candidates in an election with massive Russian interference before anyone really realised that was a thing. And he got a smaller share of the vote than Mitt Romney. That's the last time he won anything, right? That freaky situation against a candidate who was supposed to be under federal investigation. That was the thing that damaged Hillary Clinton. After that, we went to the midterms. There was a blue wave. If you predicted a blue wave for 2 years, all you ever heard was, no, it's different now because Trump's going to energise the base and they're all going to come out and vote in these little races. That was a place for him. Didn't happen. He won the midterms. Then I said he'd get impeached, right? That there was just so much stuff they could impeach before they would, right? Ridiculous. That's just you being biased. The worst 5-to-1 shot in the world, right? Even 24 hours before he was impeached, when it was blatantly obvious to anyone following the stories, he was 6-4, 7-4, and there was a whole chorus of it's just biased, lamestream media nonsense. Of course he won't be impeached. And here we are again, right? He's instigated the Capitol, right? A terrorist attack, as I call it, right? This has been exposed on daily, on nightly primetime TV, right? Trump's role in it, and his general insanity about the election result. And the Republicans have been suffering in the polls since. I'm not saying that's the direct reason, but part of it. And now his place is under federal investigation for the most serious of national security breaches. The media are not allowed to tell you what is in those boxes that he took away, right? And somehow a narrative has started that this is good for him. It's all going to turn around. Most people, the majority of Americans do not support Donald Trump, despise him. 53% want him charged over January 6th. 56% wanted him impeached the first time, wanted him removed from office. The reason he lost all those elections is Trump energizes Trump dominates the conversation. Everything that his daily controversies dominate the whole narrative, and a smallish majority always come out against him, right? So what I think now happens, I mean, never mind the legal stuff. He pleaded the fifth today. We all know what that means. He said it himself. Only the mob take the fifth. And we're now going to see the midterms. And if the midterms don't go well for the Republicans, which I don't think they will particularly, it's a disaster for him. It won't have helped him. It will have. At that point, I just cannot see how it isn't easy for DeSantis to move, just dominate the race. That is if Trump even runs. I mean, look, he's raising money, but his money he's raising will pay the legal bills.
And William, just the Letitia James comment that she's basically being racist. I mean, the man is completely mad. But I don't understand American politics. I don't understand how we came to this situation in the first place. If you were to price it up now, and I'm not sure we have this on the market, what price he ends up in jail?
Gosh, I would not be any bigger than the max I would want to lay anybody probably would be something like maybe 5-6-ish to 1. I think the imaginary bar, right, the sort of Nixon style imaginary bar, like he's a former president, he surely can't go to prison. It is probably something people think about more than what he's actually been accused of, which is very much in that danger zone. But I'm no legal expert on it. But all of the charges I'm facing, they're massively serious. But who knows what happens with these investigations? There are so many of them, and this stuff takes a very long time. These investigations are moving at pace, and we've only got to, this raid, which nobody knew was coming yesterday, and this deposition could be years.
Very appropriately, we just heard the police are in the background. And Ms. James suspects the Trump organization fraudulently overstated the value of real estate properties while applying for bank loans, while understating them with the tax authorities in order to pay less in taxes. Can I just get to, though, Joe Biden's climate bill kind of getting the all clear effectively? How big is this, Paul, for the Democrats? How big is this for Biden? Because whatever it'll actually achieve, it's taken some time.
It has, and I think Joe Biden's had the best 2 or 3 weeks of his presidency. A number of achievements, the microchip semiconductors investment, that was a big deal too. Big, even ever stronger arms have been sent to Ukraine, and that might have helped. And if you look at how the Democrats are generally performing in the last 2 or 3 weeks, the other driver, of course, was Roe v. Wade, which kind of has crystallised people, I think, whose side they're on. When you look at the state races, importantly for the Senate, the Democrats have ticked up considerably. I think they'll keep the Senate now. Personally, I think they will win 51 seats, and they could win more. It's not out of the question. And I think that is because Biden is achieving things, right? You know, the thing with Biden is it kind of like, it really crystallises so much what's wrong with politics, modern politics now, that most of the time, all you hear about Joe Biden is some meme about his age, right? Or, you know, he got a word mixed up. Because he's not in any way like a sort of trained actor like we've become used to, right? But yet he's an old school politician who knows the Senate inside out, who can cut deals. You know, nobody thought it was possible to do deals between Republicans and Democrats before these last 2 years. And he's done it several times. So I think that was working for him.
Would you back 8-11 they win the Senate?
Yes. Does that include the tie?
It does not. Just on that, I believe we'll work out the rules probably tomorrow, but at the moment, I imagine we would count independents on who they would caucus with. I imagine that would be the first to do at the moment, but tomorrow there'll be an update that we've just got up. We're going 2 options for the moment, by the way, if you're watching this and you might be having a punt. And the way I imagine the 2 options work out are that we take whatever, whoever's gone to the caucuses, and we count whoever's caucusing with who as the either side. But there may be no overall control added tomorrow because we've just gone up with it.
Why are the Democrats marginal favourites, William?
A few of the accomplishments of Biden, I think things have genuinely gotten a bit better. Biden was being hit with nothing but bad news a month, 6 weeks ago. That's steadily changed. Passing the IRA Act, in Inflation Reduction Act, I should clarify, was a very big achievement for him. Also, on a national security level, the taking out of al-Zawahiri, very good. It plays very well domestically. That always plays well with the US audience. So you've got a big national security achievement. You've got a big domestic achievement.
Well, I presume the climate, in fairness, the climate thing, William, it's been obviously, you know, we've had horrific situations with flooding in Virginia. Everyone in the States can see this is happening. This has to be a win for him. This has to be a big win, and even to convince some doubters that actually this is an achievement.
Oh yeah, it is. It definitely is, and also it gives. Biden's main asset will always be competency in the sense of his executive office, right? In the sense that here's a president that could actually get something done rather than 200 infrastructure weeks in a row. So him going and getting that through is obviously a big bonus. I think also these issues being brought to light, it allows him a bit of time and space. Listen, there'll be some distraction because of the Trump stuff. But in general, he's had some positive time in the spotlight. His numbers are trending up, and also, let's not forget Roe, which is just one of the most motivating turnout factors possibly we might have seen in a long time, particularly not just for women, but for women of color, I would imagine, in Republican states where that's going to be a key battleground issue. As we know, abortion rights in the US are supported by and large nationally.
Just on the 2024 elected president market, him, DeSantis are Trump and DeSantis. DeSantis are 3's joint favourite. Biden is 6's. And again, Paul, this is obviously an age thing, but if Biden doesn't win it, who do you like on the Democrat side?
I think that there's a very good chance he won't run. Very good chance. I think Kamala Harris would be a very strong favourite to win that, especially if the administration is indeed competent, seen as competent. Gavin Newsom is an interesting candidate, and he does sort of give the impression that he's running, or at least building, a national profile with a view to running this time or next time. And my outsider is Gretchen Whitmer.
Okay. And on the
who is Michigan governor.
So you must like DeSantis at 7-4 to be the Republican nominee, then, do you?
Yeah, I personally think it would be DeSantis, but I wouldn't take a 7-4 chance
okay.
in a race like that. But I wouldn't. I've laid Trump. That's my position.
Fight for the Democrats to win to be the winning party at the election.
They're probably about right. Because just get back onto the Senate. It's quite important. Again, really important probably to know the exact thing, because each betting firm is going to have different rules here, right? So you've got 100 seats. At the moment, the score is 50-50. And that means the Democrats control it because Kamala Harris has to decide to vote. So that would apply again in November. But two of the Democrats, Bernie Sanders and Angus King, aren't Democrats. They're independents who caucus with them. And different firms like Betfair don't count those two as Democrats.
So I think it's who controls the Senate. So basically,
yes, if it's just who controls the Senate, it could be
my understanding, William. Yeah,
it would be a two-horse race, and in that case, again, that's a golden rule of American political betting. The same thing applies to presidential: is to know the stakes, because this Senate race, it boils down to, I've got a list of 9 states, and that's really ambitious that they all matter. At least 2 on one side, right? Democrats are 5-1 on to make a gain immediately with Pennsylvania, because that's an open seat, right? So they'll be on 51. So it'll be 51-49. After that, they've really got 4 defences to worry about, and they are 3-1 on in New Hampshire, 2-1 on in Georgia, 8-15 Arizona, and about even money in Nevada. So you're heavy odds on that they are going to keep the Senate, that they are going to be 50 or better. So if you can take the tie out of the equation, then something like 8. I mean, indeed, you can do that. That's what it is, because on Betfair, Republican majority is 2.3 something to lay. So you're laying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the maths are wrong. When you go through the states, there's a good chance the Democrats could gain a few as well. They've got chances. They're not. I would say they're probably only just going to gain that one. Nothing else changes. But they could theoretically go at 52 or 53.
Last word for you on this, William.
Yeah, I mean, really good explanation by Paul. I'm a bit cooler on getting involved in the midterms right now. I want to see how the polls settle over the next couple of weeks. I want to see if Biden can knock another victory or two, and how the market sort of reacts to Trump sort of being news again, and whether people sort of go with some of the old myths that we've seen over the last 2 years. When it comes to the next president, I couldn't say I've ever been electorally, right, from a political punting view, a huge Joe Biden fan. I thought I wouldn't have said that he was an absolute cert until very late on to win the election. I've always thought Democrats would be in trouble traditionally, but I think things have changed. And I'll tell you what, if he was to run, 6 is massive. If he was to run, it's massive. And in that same line of thinking, if he doesn't, then the 14th for Kamala Harris suddenly is like a 6 tops, or probably maybe even shorter. So if you wanted to go and take a chance, you probably can be a bit chancy and do that if you think either of them would be, say, Trump or DeSantis, and get yourself a decent position. That's the way I'm sort of thinking about it. I haven't got really strong views other than that. Also, my thinking is with the Democrats, I wonder if I don't know how keen, firstly, anybody would be to sort of. I think if Biden runs, he won't be blocked, and I think it would be tough for some to go against Harris, though not impossible. I think if he doesn't, then there's the possibility of that race opening up a bit. But I'd say if you think the Democrats will be the winning party, then Biden and Harris are not terrible bets at this stage. But I'm really sort of watching and waiting a bit.
Let's finish up on Liz Truss. And I did like this from the Papua New Guinea London correspondent. I should know it might be called the Papua New Guinea Courier, but this is the letter from London for our correspondent. To the island of Shakespeare, where energy companies wring 400% profits and energy consumers are reduced to ringing Jeremy Vine, in the home of blank verse, nobody can afford to use a meter. As Liz Truss prepares to take charge and distances herself from the administration she administered by remaining relentlessly focused on turbocharging us with meaningless banalities, it seems quaint that Brexit was once thought the island's nadir. And it goes on like this. Liz Truss won to 12 to be the Conservative Party's new leader. And to be fair, William, this does look like a fait accompli at this stage, but more importantly, Star Sports does have betting on her vote share, and the favourite in this market is 60 to 65, 13 to 8, and obviously the man who was hot favourite for a long time, Rishi Sunak, he looks like he's run out of rope.
Yeah, and he's even suffering defectors now, which is going to be quite painful for him.
Some defectors saying that they don't like how he's flip-flopped on economic issues. I'm like, well, Liz Truss has flip-flopped on a million issues in the last 2 years, or it's anyway. I don't know. Explain.
Yeah. It's just electoral interest, isn't it? Really, it's people clambering to fill up the ministerial positions, because never has there been so much openness in who might get into cabinet and who might be a junior minister and who might even be sort of an assistant to a Secretary of State, and there'll be PPS's positions up for grabs. There's going to be a lot of political moving and shaking in the Conservative Party.
This is a woman who, in her debate with Sunak, basically said you can challenge the sea level rise by more domestic recycling, if I'm to be believed. This is the woman who's going to be leader of the Conservative Party.
Yeah, but that's
what's your point?
Johnny, mate, you need to spend some more time over it. You sound surprised.
We have some kind of dull politicians, but they're fairly earnest and reasonably intelligent. Anyway, William, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is now, right? Like, that's normal Ireland for you. I know I'm giving a bit of a personal view, but there is a sort of a more serious point, which is that Truss looks increasingly likely to be the person in number 10 after Boris Johnson. And I think there's rightful worry that she is either unaware, unserious about, or not ready to tackle the multitude of problems she'll inherit, or all three. And that's going to have real effects. Of course, we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis, which is going to continue to escalate at least through January. We're headed for recession as well. And that's going to make things very, very difficult for Truss in that first year. There's not going to be really, I don't think, a honeymoon period because of the increases in the price cap and because of the inflation making life much more difficult for the government. What she decides to do about it, nobody truly knows. Right,
including Liz herself.
Yeah, I think to a point. The plan is tax cuts, and that's not going to work for the people who need it most. She could, of course, do a big swivel or whatever, but how deep is she prepared to dig for another package, and what will that package actually do? The Rishi Sunak package, and I couldn't say necessarily that I thought the government had to be the light to tackle this crisis quickly, but the Sunak package was generous in its nature at the time. The only issue is the various factors wiped it out. Martin Lewis said he needs to double it. Truss is still sort of denying that any more help is needed. There's going to be an ugly clash with reality, and I imagine that's going to hurt the Conservatives at the polls. Markets on our end haven't moved that much yet, but I imagine there'll be some big shifts when she gets in.
This is like a novelty market, Paul, like one of these throwaway markets where you're just looking at it. I'll look at this for a bit of crack. I mean, you have massive inflation in Britain, massive inflation across Europe. You have the climate crisis. You obviously have the Brexit mess, and she's kind of trying to win effectively on effectively lowering taxes. I don't know. Where's the value in this market if there is one?
She's appealing to the people she needs to appeal
exactly, to. Yeah, and she's 1 to 12. It has worked. It has worked. I'm not going to say it hasn't.
And the same thing may yet apply with the electorate. I look, obviously I'm not a Tory, right? I think she's one of those people, Liz Truss, that non-Tories don't get at all, that Tories do love. And, you know, each side of the coin has that. I don't necessarily think she will be so terrible. I mean,
okay,
right. And I think that, well, number one, first, right. So as Will pointed out, the tax cut measures won't get to the people who need it most. Sorry to be brutal here.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Right? If they are cutting petrol tax, and the average consumer can see it in their pocket, that's popular. That's British politics. That will get a great headline on the front page of the Sun and the Daily Star, and, you know, give her a little bounce. And also, I mean, whatever they say now, there is every chance there is going to be a massive bailout at some point of energy bills by the state, which, as with furlough, will probably lead to like this, you know, massive, this bizarre, sudden, you know, goodwill and cult building around them, you know, that they're doing it all for the people. I mean, I don't, I'm not ruling it out at all. I know this country too well. And interestingly, this may sound contrarian to the general consensus, but I've just taken my profit on the most seats market. I laid the Tories at 1.57 a year ago. Roughly. Wow. We're starting to go wrong. Now, you'd think they're way behind in the polls. No one thinks very much of Liz Truss, etc. Looking at the constituencies, I think they're going to win most seats. I don't see Labour until like Keir Starmer does something, or they have some policies that really cut through or show that people actually want a Labour government. I just don't think, you know, it'll probably, you know, I'm not saying they'll keep their majority, but they will hard to destroy.
Last word to you, William. I hadn't seen this market until now. The Conservatives are actually still favourites to get the next seats. The toxic Boris Johnson brand, at the very least, is gone. They can build from here. I totally agree with Paul here. I don't know what Labour stands for, to be honest. Centre-right, populist, I don't know. And maybe small little matters like Paul is suggesting in terms of your energy bills and little things like that can sway the electorate, because it doesn't take much nowadays one way or the other, when I don't know what Labour even stands for. Last word to you, William.
Just so quickly on the Labour point, by this time next week, the excellent Sienna Marder and Adam Payne of Politics Home have just given us an exclusive, which says that Labour is preparing for their interventions next week. Starmer might make a speech on Monday. The article is very well written and reported, as you'd expect from them. The actual details quite vague. It's mainly slandering the other two. So by this time next week, we'll probably revisit it. They might have offered something. Yes, listen, I said before, and I stick by it, not being Jeremy Corbyn will not make Keir Starmer Prime Minister. What he and his team do about that just remains to be seen. They are still in the place from which they have, I believe, a genuine chance to win, and I'd say that'd be true against this Truss. But it will depend on their interventions, the way they make them, and the narrative they can craft, all of which are big question marks at the moment. On the government side, quickly before we go, I think what matters will be basically how much governing will Truss and her team get down and do, because there are a huge multitude of problems. It could be, especially if Labour can't come up with something really catchy or captivating, even going to fixing maybe one or two of the 5 biggest problems might be the platform to eke out some sort of victory. Can they do it? Can they get their heads down and push forward with that? I am not sure. It's a massive question mark for me on so many levels.
I can just see the Labour Party like heads like, we need something that's catchy or captivating, or both, just catchy or captivating. And to paraphrase the man who may or may not be Neil Shanning's hero in life and in politics, Gerry Adams, Neil Shanning hasn't gone away. You know, he will be back next week when we'll be back too. Hope you enjoyed that. We obviously came back with the polling station, lots to discuss there in the UK and the US. We'll be back next week.